Every once in a while, Ford designs a new F-150, a complete ground-up redesign of the whole truck. It's still a truck, but everything else has changed. And stay with me, this is still about boats. When a new F-150 shows up, everyone notices because it's one of the best-selling cars ever made. If you translate that to boats, the mid-40 footers would be the F-150. And Ford, the best-selling manufacturer, been around forever, literally changes the game for everyone else whenever they release a new model. Who gets to be Ford? Well, of course, it's Beneteau. Picture this, it's early morning, you just left the marina. There's a steady breeze on the beam and you're slicing quietly through the water at 7 knots. Later that day you drop the hook in a quiet bay, open the huge platform, and your friends jump in while you pour something cold. That's the kind of lifestyle Beneteau has in mind with this one. It's cruising, comfort, and performance all rolled together. And they've nailed it in a very impressive way. This, my friends, is the new F-150, Beneteau's 8th generation, totally redesigned, brand new mid-40 footer, a culmination of every single thing they've learned since they started out 141 years ago in 1884. In fact, they predate Ford by 19 years. Ford came along in 1903. So what is this Oceanis 47 all about? Well, Beneteau calls it the next evolution in their famous Oceanis line. Oceanis boats are basically the ones cruising everywhere in the world. They describe it as the perfect blend of performance and onboard comfort. And honestly, that's a pretty good summary. That's all I could think after I got on this boat. The idea is to create a yacht that can handle serious offshore cruising if you want to cross the ocean, but also one that's comfortable enough to live aboard or weekend cruise with friends and family, or just leave it at the dock like a cottage. Let's talk about the bones of this boat for a second. The Oceanis 47 measures just shy of 48 feet overall and carries a beam about 14 foot 9. That's wide enough to give you a massive interior and tons of cockpit space without feeling too bulky underway. Depending on which version you choose, draft runs between 6 feet 2 inches for the shallow keel or 8 foot 1 for the deep version. Displacement's around 24,000 pounds, which gives you a good feel of a real cruiser, solid but still lively. Let's talk about that draft for a second. These boats are still made with the bolt-on fin keel, which is supported by a grid system inside the hull. A lot of people don't like this approach because, well, there haven't been any keel failures lately. Actually, in a long time there haven't been any. The early days of this approach didn't always go so well. If you're a full keel kind of person, this boat's not going to appeal to you. And the 6-foot draft, that's the shallow one. While other manufacturers are trying to accommodate more and more people with shallower boats, some as low as 4 feet, Beneteau is not having it. 6 feet is the smallest one you can have, so it'll perform better, but it'll hit bottom sooner. Let's hope it's just sand. She carries 52 gallons of fuel and nearly 100 gallons of fresh water, which is a nice balance for coastal or moderate offshore trips. Power comes from an inboard diesel up to 80 horse, plenty to push you through a calm anchorage or get you home when the wind dies. The Oceanis 47 is also CE rated Category A for up to 10 people and ocean capable, meaning it's fully capable of handling the offshore passages if you really want to. The first thing that grabs you when you step aboard is the cockpit. It's enormous, twin helm, wide walk-through access to the swim platform, and a center table big enough for dinner for the whole crew. It's designed so that everything feels open and social. You can steer, you can sail, you can socialize, or just stretch out with your feet up on the coaming. And that swim platform, it folds down to make a full-width terrace right on the water, perfect for swimming or paddleboarding or loading up the dinghy, or just sitting there with your coffee watching the sun come up. Comfort at anchor is a big part of this boat's story. The wide beam carries aft, giving you a huge cockpit that's easy to access. That makes life at anchor or mooring feel more like you're on a floating patio. You're not climbing ladders or squeezing past gear. Everything's wide open and made for lounging. Underway, the 47 strikes a balance between easy handling and real sailing performance. With the deeper keel and a modern hull, she moves well even in lighter air, and when the wind picks up, the twin rudders are balanced and the sail plan keeps her steady and responsive. She's also got a near full-length chine, so she'll heel to a certain degree and then she'll want to stop. You won't be chasing every tenth of a knot like on a purebred race boat, but you'll have that comfortable, steady, fast cruising motion that eats up miles without wearing you out. Beneteau also offers a first version of this boat with a taller mast, slightly more sail area for sailors who want a bit more punch out of the boat. That's a great option for people who plan to cover ground quickly or sail in light wind areas. Moving below deck, you can see how much thought Beneteau put into livability on this boat. The interior feels light and spacious, and thanks to the massive hull windows and skylights, it's always very bright. The main saloon has that airy apartment vibe that Beneteau's been refining for years. Bright wood tones, clean lines, and smart use of every inch. There's a full galley with real counter space, a big nav table, and a saloon settee that feels more like a living room than a typical boat bench. Depending on the version, you can go for the owner's layout with one big aft cabin and a forward master, or a 3-cabin setup if you want room for guests or charter work. Let's talk about who this boat is really for. The Oceanis 47 is aimed squarely at couples or families who are ready for a big enough boat to live aboard or go offshore, but who still want to handle it without having to hire crew. The deck layout is friendly for short-handed sailing for a couple, sheets and halyards led aft, winches are right at the helms, and everything's designed for push-button simplicity. If you spent years on a 35 to 40 foot cruiser and you're ready for more comfort and range, this boat is going to be your sweet spot. Now, as with every boat, there are a few trade-offs worth mentioning. With the big boat beam and the tall freeboard, docking in a crosswind will take a little more planning than a smaller or lower slung boat. The shallow draft option gives you better access to those skinny water anchorages, but you lose a bit of pointing ability upwind. The deep draft version sails better, but you'll be eyeing the chart more closely, especially on the East Coast in Florida or the Bahamas. The displacement, around 24,000 pounds, means she's solid in a seaway, but you'll also need a decent breeze to really get her moving in light air, unless you go for the taller rig version and fly a code. Maintenance costs, dockage fees, and sales for a boat this size all scale up too, so buyers need to go in with their eyes open. It's not a weekend toy. This boat is a real cruiser meant to be lived on, sailed far, and enjoyed for years. But when you step back and look at what Beneteau's done here, it's pretty remarkable. You're getting a boat that's large enough to cross oceans, small enough to manage as a couple, modern enough to feel like a high-end condo, and tough enough for some blue water work. That's a tricky balance to strike, and they've pulled it off beautifully. From a lifestyle perspective, it's easy to imagine life on board this boat. You've got the big cockpit for entertaining, the swim platform for diving and paddleboarding, and an interior that feels more like home than most boats in its class. It's the kind of sailboat that makes people fall in love with the idea of living on a sailboat without scaring them off with the complexity of a full-on passage maker. If you're looking at one of these boats in person, check out the details that make it stand out. Massive windows that make the saloon glow with daylight, the clever storage solutions under everything, the way you can move from the helm to the companionway without climbing over anything. These are the things that make living aboard easy, and let's face it, easy is what keeps people out sailing longer. When you compare it to something like the older Oceanis 45 or 461, you can really see how much evolution has happened here. The 47 feels more like a refined, more well thought out design. It's smoother, cleaner, and smarter. The lines are sleeker, the interior finishes are higher quality, and everything just feels a little bit more dialed in. If I had to sum it up in one sentence, I'd say this. The Beneteau Oceanis 47 is built to make serious cruising accessible without making it intimidating. You can sail it short-handed, live aboard comfortably, and go as far as your ambition and weather window will let you. Is the interior still made of veneers from IKEA? Yes. Is the beam carried all the way aft for comfort a big compromise to ocean sailing? Also yes. The high aspect keel and grid system, not my favorite way of sticking a keel on a hull? No, it's not my favorite. But despite this boat's not being a hardened Force 10 in the North Atlantic battle axe, I still love it. Not for what it isn't, but for what it is. For a family-friendly cruising sailboat for couples that makes boat life in the islands a proper retirement goal for a total redesign of everything we know to date on how to make a sailboat a nice place to be, to live on, to call home while you're down in the heat of the Caribbean islands. This boat is sensational. For anyone watching this dreaming about what the next step might look like, this is the kind of boat that turns those dreams into plans. You can actually see yourself doing it, crossing the Gulf Stream, anchoring in the Exumas, or heading down the intercoastal in total comfort. Would you take this one to the Bahamas? How about the Caribbean? If you already have one of these, we'd love to hear from you. Pros and cons of these boats. If you're boat shopping, what about this boat turns you on or off? Leave a comment. Also, if you're into the cruising life and might consider a trip to Mexico, check out this great article we have called Sailing the Sea of Cortez in Summer, Cruising Guide and Off-Season Tips. This article's filled with ideas and tips and a lot of fun to read. If you're up for some learning today, I'll leave a link in the description. If you like sailboat videos, please give this one a thumbs up. It really helps us out. And it lets YouTube know you're into this stuff, so it'll show you more of it. And hit subscribe so that I can see you again next time.